Hi, you said your name is DeAndre?
My name is DeAndre.
All right, and you agreed. I told you I'd give you $10 for an interview, and then if you can prove the things I say wrong, then I'll give you $100. Fair enough?
Fair enough, I agree.
All right, and I said I'm gonna go over like reality with you, like some kind of new science beliefs, what you believe, and like religion and whatnot. Just go cover a few things.
All right.
All right, on a scale of 1 to 10, how open-minded would you say you are?
10.
10? All right, that's cool. Do you think you should look at both sides of an argument before making a decision on what's right?
I do believe we should look at both sides of the argument.
All right. Do you trust your senses?
I do trust my senses.
Do you trust the government?
I do trust the government, even though they fall into temptation sometimes. But that's what everybody goes through.
All right.
And that's about the end of that.
All right, fair enough. Do you think the majority is always right?
The majority is not always right.
Is always right. Like majority of people say 90% of people believe in the Big Bang Theory. I mean, do you think they're always right? Like, I mean, there's smart scientists that are going to back it up, you know? Do you think they're always right?
The smart scientists
That's just an example.
are always going to back it up. No, but there is always a 0.1% chance that something might change. For example, like in the blood with disease. There's an example that if you touch the source, you may be healed, and you may be fully healed, but you may resort back to the old way if you forget the medical treatment. So it's very fond of people to go over their treatment plan and try to remember their counseling.
All right, fair enough. How do you believe everything came to be? Do you believe like in creationism, like God made everything? Do you believe in the Big Bang, or you just don't have really a belief on that?
Well, at one point in time, I was in the middle bonded between both science and faith, and I was raised to believe in faith first. So I believed at one point everything came from the sun, and the sun was God. And that's when science backed it up. And that's when, to your previous question, it made it believe that science was updating itself to keep up with faith.
All right. So what would be your definition of science?
My definition of science would be y equals mx plus b.
Do you believe, how would you agree with me on this? It should be observable, measurable, testable, and repeatable?
Yes.
Science?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think science should ever be a closed book? Like questioning things?
Science should definitely be a closed book
It should
some
be a
of
closed,
the time.
some things you shouldn't be able to question with science?
At certain times, there are some things you should be able to question with science.
Can you give me an example of one?
Well, animal behavior is one, for example.
Okay.
At certain hours of the night or at certain hours of the day.
It's things that you can actually observe for yourself or whatever you're saying. Like you can
Exactly.
Okay, I got you there. All right. What do you think's the difference, in your opinion, what's the difference between a belief and a knowing?
A belief is something that you have without 100% knowledge. Knowing is something that you have without 100% belief.
I mean, like, could I give an example of knowing? Like me and you, it's a self-evident fact that me and you here talking pretty much. That's a knowing. Would you agree?
Yes, that's a knowing. For example, like when you told me your name and I told you my name, that's 100% knowing.
No, unless we lied about our names or something. But yeah, I agree
Exactly.
with you 100% there, man. All right, this is where it's gonna kind of get a little weird. And like I said, I'm not trying to offend or anything like that. But in this question here, is this a belief or a knowing? What's your opinion on the shape of the Earth? Do you believe it's an oblate spheroid like we've been taught? Do you believe it's without form? Or do you believe it's a level plane?
I believe the Earth is without form. It can be malleable and created to do anything that you need it to do. It provides 100% of the supply that you need. And originally, that was a knowing.
Back in the day or whatever.
Yes.
So you believe that they faked all the moon missions and all that stuff, space travel, they're just lying to us about the stuff?
Originally, I believe they did that at first because they were without knowing, and reality used to change around them. But it was stagnant at one point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you have things like the plague or stories about darkness. So that's cool.
All right, so you believe it's without, so you don't believe what the mainstream's telling us. Like the majority would say it's an oblate spheroid spinning around the sun, doing all this, like going fast speeds and all that. You don't buy that.
No, I definitely buy that.
But how could it be without form then if it's an oblate spheroid?
Well, that's the thing. If it's a opioid and it's a round form, there's a golden ring that surrounds it, and there's a smaller crater that's inside of it. So when it opens like that, something comes out and it heals the hand that it binds with.
So you do believe what the mainstream's saying, like it's a round ball going around the sun, basically, oblate? Pretty much, or, I mean, so you're going to go with the mainstream, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the mainstream.
All right, it's fair enough. You do know this is a huge movement that's been going on. I'm not saying it's flat. I mean, because it's like a loaded term. Like some people with level plane. I more kind of think like you see the movie The Matrix, like a simulation. I kind of believe that. I mean, and I looked at this theory in 2017 that my buddy told me about it, and I was like, get out of here. That's the stupidest shit you've got to be coming at me with. And then I looked at it, and I noticed other scientists are actually looking at it too, and they can't explain it. So, I mean, do you want me to give you a few reasons why I don't believe what they're telling us?
Yeah.
It's true?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, like we said, science should be observable, measurable, testable, repeatable.
Yes.
It's a known scientific fact. No matter who you go to, water will take the shape of its container 1,000,000% of the time. Have you ever not seen water not take the shape of its container?
I've not seen it take the shape of the container when it's frozen.
When it's frozen, but we don't live on a frozen planet, do we?
Ooh.
The Earth's covered in 72.
Some people do, but
but the Earth's covered in 72% water, so you have to believe water's bending and holding form, right? Have you ever seen anywhere in reality where that would show that's even physically possible?
Well,
I mean, I've never seen it, but I mean, hey, I'm asking you if you've seen it.
I can't even explain any details of that right now.
All right, fair enough. Okay, I'll give you another reason why I don't believe it. All right. Do you know what? Have you ever used a pressurized deodorant canister before, like you spray your armpits and stuff?
Yeah.
All right. We live in a positive pressurized environment. They say space is the closest thing to a negative pressure system. Not like a perfect negative pressure, but as close as you can get, basically. So we live in a positive pressure system. They say space is a negative pressure system. I go to science in a lab, they can't recreate that. Could you give me one practical example of two separate pressurized environments coexisting side by side without a solid barrier? Like a firmament, like it says in the Bible?
Firmament.
Like two opposing pressure systems. Like, you know that the deodorant can, or when you crack a pop?
Yep.
Have you ever seen anything that would show that would be possible?
Well, I believe when I think of Coke, I think of Europe. And when I think of deodorizing spray, I also think of North America and Africa.
Okay.
And I think about the swagger between the two. Because...
But you think that's an example of two opposing pressure systems existing side by side with no barrier? Like I said, we both agreed science should be observable, measurable, testable, repeatable. They can't show you water bending and holding form in a lab. They can't show you two opposing pressure systems existing side by side in a lab either with no barrier.
And that's why you may have to go to the Bible.
It does say it's without form in the Bible.
Exactly.
at the very beginning.
Exactly.
All right. You know my last point on it? Well, I mean, I got a couple other ones, but my other point, have you ever heard the star Polaris?
I have heard of the star Polaris.
You know where it's located?
New Andromeda.
It's right in the middle, right above the North Pole, which I like to call it's like a realm basically without form. Polaris, it's a fact. You can look at its time lapse, and everything makes like perfect geocentric circles around it. Polaris kind of vibrates back and forth, but everything makes, it's the only stationary star up there, and it's the very center of us. Everything makes perfect geocentric circles around it. In the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, they go opposite. But I mean, it's everything's still going around Polaris. So, I mean, here's the $100 question if you can prove me wrong, right?
All right.
Basically, there's something called the ether. Nikola Tesla believed in it. I think Aristotle. They all believe like the Earth. Aristotle didn't believe the Earth was round, but they believed that the sun and moon were going around us on a round thing. Tesla believed in the ether. Einstein banished it basically. I think fall like a false axiom. Things fall. They can kind of measure how fast they fall at. But I don't believe it's because of gravity. I believe it's because of ether. That's what's holding us on the ground and stuff. And I believe that's what's moving the stuff up in the sky. So how would you disprove the North Star is stationary basically? It vibrates and kind of moves a little bit, but it doesn't move from its and everything's spinning around it. How would you disprove everything's spinning around us, causing the Coriolis effect? The moon would push the tides. The sun would contract the tides. They say if you shoot a bullet west, it'll dip down because of the Coriolis effect. But we say it's based off a false axiom, and that's if you shoot that bullet west at nighttime when the moon's there, it'll bounce up. It'll do the opposite thing. And then, you know what a lunar eclipse is?
I do know what a lunar eclipse is.
What's the lunar eclipse in your opinion?
The lunar eclipse is when the moon and the sun do that.
That's a solar eclipse. A lunar, that's when you see them both in the sky and the moon blocks out the sun. A lunar eclipse.
No, that's the solar eclipse when the moon goes in front of
from the sun. Yep. A lunar eclipse is in mainstream will tell us that it's when the sun. If you will you hold up both your hands for me?
Yeah.
The sun, it kind of side, like keep them side to side or whatever.
Yeah.
Say the Earth's in between your hands, hypothetically, and say the moon's on one side and the sun's on the other side.
All right.
All right, and they say it's the Earth's because it's always a round shadow. It's always dark when there's a lunar eclipse, and they say it's always a round shadow, and that's proof the Earth's round going by it. Would you agree the sun's round?
I would agree that the sun is round.
Everything in the sky we can agree is probably round, right? Pretty much. All right. So what we believe, or what we're starting to push, is space and time don't bend, basically. Like, or that's what Einstein put out to like banish the ether, the warping of space and time.
Yes.
So we don't believe space and time bend. We don't believe anything's in between the Earth, between the sun and the moon. Like we believe it's a level, like whatever realm, whatever you want to call it. Earth doesn't move, and we believe it's actually the sun because it's blocking out the moon during the lunar eclipse because it's on the other side of this realm or whatever you want to say. So how would you disprove that? Like I said, I got $100 if you could disprove. If you give me an example of water conforming.
Rounding on the other side. Wow.
If you can give me an example, if you can disprove one of these things, water conforming the exterior shape, give me an example of two opposing pressure systems with no solid barrier, or how would you disprove the fact that I believe it's the sun blocking out the moon and space and time don't bend? Are you intrigued to look in the subject after I'm talking to you about it?
Yes, sir.
I hope so. That's why I'm doing these things, man. So will you can't. I'll give you the $10, obviously. And you admit that you want to think about it over for a second to try to get the 100 or no? Or you just want the 10?
Well, see, right now the sun is in the south, so the moon should be in the west. So if you go like this, that's Polaris.
Yeah, Polaris is always in the center of us.
And that's about it. I can't disprove anything else any further.
Can't disprove anything, so all right.
No.
All right, man. So like I said, moon. They say proofs of gravity is moon tides. I can easily just say, hey, the moon pushes them tides. They'll say the Coriolis effect. I'll say, look at Polaris. It's stationary. Everything spins around us. That causes a Coriolis effect in each hemisphere. I mean, they don't really got. I mean, have you ever seen the curvature of the Earth before?
Wow. Oh, you know what? I can't even speak on that.
I like to refer people, like, you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson is, right?
Yeah.
He'll tell you, have you ever seen that Red Bull high jump on TV?
Red Bull high jump, the commercial?
It's a Red Bull thing. A guy jumps from like 20, I think it's like 25,000 feet. It's like 23 miles in the air, and it looks like it's curved or whatever. But even Neil deGrasse says that it's he says they use a fisheye lens. You can't see it from that height. You know who Richard Branson is?
Yeah.
He took people up supposedly to space, and he went 63 miles up. And Neil deGrasse Tyson said the same thing. You cannot see the curvature there from that height. It's like fisheye lens. I mean, the one thing that's weird about what he says is the 127, the Red Bull high jump. That's like 23 miles up. He says that would be the equivalent of being 2 millimeters off the globe, so you shouldn't be able to see curvature. But then he also said with the 63 miles up, that would be the equivalent of 2 millimeters off the globe, which makes no sense. That should be like 5 millimeters or something. Because I mean, that's a big difference, 63 miles to 23 miles.
Yeah.
But either way, Neil says that you can't see it from 63 miles in there. So people are saying, "Oh, I can see it from an airplane." I've flown on airplanes. I've looked at this subject inside out, and I tried to disprove it, and I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world. But I think people are starting to wake up and starting to question. Have you ever heard of the Antarctic Treaty before?
I've not heard of the Antarctic Treaty.
Coincidentally, right when the space race started, they made. I'm not claiming an ice wall or something like that. I think it's possible more land or something like that. But they made Antarctica the only sovereign nation in the world. They did this right at the beginning of the space race, 1958. First satellite supposedly broke through the blue sky. I think it was Sputnik or something like that. Or maybe that's when it hit the moon. They're all around the same time zone. I mean, I'll give you some information. You gotta check the stuff out and you can look into it, man. But I mean, like I said, there's scientists that got honors degree in mathematics and physics, and they're getting steamrolled by this subject. So I mean, I don't know. That's about it, man. I mean, you think any other proofs? It's tough coming at you, I know, on a street interview like this, not expecting these questions. But
yeah. Any other proofs? Let me see.
Believe me, I'm gonna tell you, you ain't gonna think of any proofs, man. Because I've looked for the proofs. I mean, I checked this out for over 5 years, man.
Yeah.
But all right, well, thank you. I'll give you the $10, and thank you very much for this interview. You're right?
Yep.
All right, thank you very much.